Well, we're back. So today is the 3rd of May 2015, and this video is about the 10th and final card in the Celtic Cross spread. And if you remember, we started a new column with card number 7, right? You've got a circle shape, and then we've got a column on the right as we look at this, as the reader looks at the spread. So the 7th card shows the questioner, the 8th shows the influence of other people, the 9th shows hopes and fears, and now this 10th card shows the final outcome. So it's a bit like the general direction in which things are going to go, and it may be good or it may be bad. At the same time, I'm saying the final outcome, but we should be realistic here about what the final outcome is referring to or is pointing to, because it's like this card in the 10th position shows a condition or a situation that is going to be coming about, and it can be like a complete end, depending on the question that's been asked. If it can have a complete end, that's what it can show. Or it can be outlining an important changeover stage that you're going to arrive at, that you're going to have to go through. So if the question is about a new job, for instance, like how am I going to do with this new job, then the final outcome, maybe it's about how you'll be handling the new position maybe a few months into it, right? And we can know if you're going to be happy and in control, or if you're going to be struggling in the new position. So we would then look at, if the card shows a struggle, then we would look to figure out what you can or should do to regain control, or to be less affected by problems that are cropping up, for instance. What you can do to make things better, I think, can be what that final outcome would show. It doesn't mean that you're doomed, you'll never be able to solve it, but it's more, this is the kind of thing that's going to be going wrong or happening. So figure out in advance what you can do to minimize the effect of the problem, or to remove it completely. Because at the same time, this final outcome is probably not pointing out or trying to tell you what you're going to be like 20 years from now. You know, it's not that kind of final outcome to do with a new job. Or maybe the question's about a relationship. So the 10th card, the final outcome, would show where the relationship is headed. And depending on the card, you're going to know if you like where it's headed or not. But so the final outcome, or this 10th card, it can show a future condition that might at the same time be a stage you're going to go through, because you're in the relationship now and there are various current situations happening, and so the final outcome card is pointing to or showing how these current situations are going to develop in the future. So it's that kind of final outcome rather than a kind of comment on, like, when you're 50 years of age, you're looking back for over the last 25 years, and it's not that kind of final outcome. It's more, you're in a situation at the moment, what's possible, what's likely, what's feasible, what's not possible, and you'll see that kind of information in the final outcome card. So I'm saying it's the final outcome, and some people want to qualify this final outcome idea and say it shows the final outcome if there are no changes. And that might seem okay, but the problem is, I think if you try to say it's the final outcome if there are no changes, it becomes really, really complicated, because and you end up not knowing where you are with the final outcome, because the final outcome, if it's the final outcome, if you don't make any changes, if you do make a change, this final outcome is going to change, but how much? What's it going to change into? Is it going to change for the better? Is it going to change for the worse? You sort of dig up all these types of questions if you think of the final outcome as the final outcome if there are no changes. So I'm suggesting just forget about that and look at the 10th card as showing the final outcome, period. Right? That's straightforward. So in an earlier video, I suggested that you begin the spread with all of the cards face down. right? So that you at this point you would turn the 10th card and you would see what it is for the first time. And you look at it and you consider, is it good or bad? I mean, that's one way to look at any card. You think, am I happy to see it there or am I unhappy? If I'm happy, why? And you talk about why it's a good card or why it's nice to have that card there. Or if it's a problem card or a bad card or something like that, you explain why maybe we could have had a better card there because this shows such and such a problem or an awkward situation you're going to have to deal with. But if we keep it simple and think, is it good or bad? Right. So if it shows good conditions, whatever good conditions may be, or if the card is helpful and positive, then in the final as the final outcome, it's saying do it. Right, or go for it, whatever it is that you're going for, depending on the question, or you're going to get what you want, so it's worth going for, or it's going to work out the way you want. Some kind of positive description of the behavior on the part of the questioner. Yes, go for it. But again, it depends what the question was that was asked. But whatever the question that was asked, it's going to be fine. Or it's going to work out well, or you're going to be happy with future conditions. And there are various cards that show victory or success or happiness or optimism. So if you take the idea shown by the card, so the 6 of batons, for instance, the fellow on the horse and his supporters, it's a card of victory, right? So you think, okay, we've got the idea of victory as the final outcome. So you use some kind of way of expressing what's going to happen or what's likely to happen, depending on the card that comes up. And again, apply it to the question. So that's if it's a good card. On the other hand, if the card shows problems or difficulties, that's telling a different story. And it's a bit like if that difficult card or awkward card is the final outcome, then you're going to have to go through something that you may not like, right? Or that's going to be uncomfortable, or it's going to be unpleasant. And again, depending on the card that comes up. So the 10 of Swords, for instance, as a final outcome, is probably more unpleasant than the 3 of Swords or the 5 of Cups, right? Because the 3 of Swords is sadness, 5 of Cups can be disappointment, but the 10 of Swords is more hostile, we could say. So that's the final outcome. You turn the card, and at the same time, when we turn this card, we don't turn it and then try to remember a supposed meaning, or talk about a typical meaning for the card. What we do instead is discuss what the picture shows. Because if you try to remember a meaning, you can get stuck because you can't quite remember the meaning. Or you remember a meaning, but you're not quite sure how to apply that meaning to that question. But on the other hand, you can always talk about what you're seeing in front of you. You turn a card, you look at it, you describe what you're seeing there. And when you do this, you'll find that you're able to relate the picture on the card and what it shows to the question. And I think it's important to remember too that a tarot reading is also a voyage of discovery, not just for the questioner, but for the reader as well, because as a reader you can be seeing connections between cards or to do with a card that you haven't seen before. So in that way you're discovering things as well. So we get this 10 of Swords as a final outcome. Rather than think, okay, it's ruin or it's dismay, whatever, we start talking about what we're seeing in the picture. So we're seeing somebody lying face down in the sand and there are swords in their back. So it's if the card describes you, the questioner, then things are not going to go the way you want, or they're not going to go the way you would have chosen, right? Because of what we see here, but it's upright. So this difficult or awkward situation is not going to last long, right? And it's number 10, which is the end of a cycle. So you'll suffer for a bit, but then you're going to have a chance to begin again. So make sure you start the new cycle better or on a different foundation from the current one that you're in. So the question's about a relationship. Then with the Ten of Swords as the final outcome, it's going to go through a bad period. But when you begin again with the same person, and we know what that's like, you can have a problem with somebody, but then something happens and you think, okay, forget that, we're going to begin again, or that cleared the air, and we can have a fresh start and just forget about what's going on before. So if you get that Ten of Swords, if you begin again with the same person, or if with somebody new, because it's the 10, set up some rules in advance about what will and what will not happen in the relationship, or what you like and what you don't want to have to deal with in the relationship. And if you do this, set things up, set some ground rules, you're not going to have to suffer through again what you've been struggling with. So what we're doing as readers is we're looking at the card and talking about the picture that we see there, instead of being passive and saying, like with the Ten of Swords, okay, you're doomed to defeat, or you're some other word that you read in a book for the apparent meaning of the Ten of Swords. And that apparent meaning may be somewhat true, but often it's not that helpful. And I think the reader is supposed to be of use and assistance to the questioner. So that final outcome, let's say the question's about a relationship, and the final outcome is the Three of Swords. So we look at the card, we've got the heart and the swords and pain and heartache and rain. So it looks like sorrow and sadness. But the reader doesn't have to get sucked into the negativity of the card or the depressed state of mind or the upset of the card and give a defeated reading and make it worse for the questioner. So what we say, we describe the picture and say there's a period of sorrow ahead. But this period of sorrow doesn't have to be bad, because, again, it depends on the question, because maybe the question's been going through something awkward or difficult with somebody and they're tired of it. So this Three of Swords can be saying, you're going to get rid of this person, or the relationship's going to end, and this Three of Swords is you sad because the relationship ended. But at the same time, it's the end of the cause of pain. So the sorrow is yours for a time as you consider the relationship and the fact that it didn't work out. But after a bit of time, you're going to be able to move on. Whereas you could stay in the relationship and be stuck with it, and nothing is going to change. And so this Three of Swords, even though it's sorrow, let's say at the end of the relationship, it's actually it can be a good thing. Or the final outcome could be the Four of Pentacles, right? And so we see the fellow sitting with each foot on a pentacle, holding the pentacle around his chest. He's got one in his head. So we see somebody holding on to, if we describe the picture, we see somebody holding on to what they have, or sticking with what they care about or what they value, or not wanting to spend money, right? So the future, if this is the final outcome, then the future conditions show fixity, unchangingness, and holding on, and maybe fear of losing, right? Or not wanting to change or to do something different. So it's like in the final outcome shows there's going to be more of the same, and it may go on and never change, or it may be the next step that has to be gone through. So if we relate that card to other cards, let's say you've got, it's the final outcome is the Four of Pentacles, and let's say you've got a pentacle card, a coin card in the 7th position showing the questioner. So with the same suit as the final outcome, then it looks like it's the questioner who's not going to be willing to change, but wants to hold on to what he or she knows and values. So you would incorporate this unchangingness into the reading. And maybe you would look at earlier cards that shows that shows somebody being unwilling to change, or not seeing new possibilities, right? So, at the same time, if you find coins in the 8th position showing the influence of other people, then with the 4 of coins as the final outcome, it looks more like somebody else who's going to be holding on and isn't willing to change. So the questioner can't expect immediate cooperation from other people. And so you need to factor in other people's unwillingness to change or unwillingness to see another point of view into the reading. It makes me think of the idea that if let's say you have to give a presentation or you have to give a talk, and you know that the audience is with you, right? If they're cooperative or they're with you and they agree with you, you can start with controversial points because the audience is with you. But you can sort of get straight to the point. But if the audience is not with you and you go straight to the point, you've lost them. You're never going to get through to them. So what you do if the audience isn't with you is you begin maybe with general points or a point or two about things in general as a sort of lead in to the point that you want to make, or before you get to what you want them to do. You sort of introduce the subject before you get to the real reason for your presentation or for your talk. Right, so with Pentacles in the 8th position and the 4 of Pentacles is the final outcome, if the questioner takes time to get people to get them turned around to seeing a different point of view, then would be the time to explain or describe or say what you really want, rather than start off with saying what you want. Work your way into the situation. I mentioned as well last week or in the 9th video that the 9th position can show the questioner's personal view of the future. And what their personal view can be feasible or it can be completely unrealistic. And so if we compare the 9th and 10th cards, we can see how much the person's hopes and fears will materialize, right? So you can have, if the 10th card shows the final outcome, then that's what's going to happen. And if it tells a story that's similar to the one told by the 9th position, then the person's being quite realistic and can keep on top of things. By contrast, if the 9th shows optimism and the 10th shows restriction, then we might say that the questioner could do with a reality check. You know, it can be that what they're looking for and what's going to happen are not really the same kind of thing, and they ought to adjust their expectations. Or if they adjust their expectations, they're going to deal much better and more sensibly with an awkward final card. So if you get a situation like that, the reader might encourage the questioner to make a list of their strengths and their weaknesses in order that the questioner can have a better picture in their own mind of what's going on or what they ought to do or what they can do. There's actually a technique called a SWOT analysis, SWOT. And what you do is there are 4 quadrants, but you make a list of your strengths, the weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, right? Business people do it, well, I think it developed first for business people. So what you do is you look at, if there's something you're not quite sure about whether you ought to do it or not, you look at the strengths that you've got that you can apply, what the weaknesses are and how they're going to be affected, what opportunities this will give rise to, and what threats you have to deal with, maybe from rivals or from other people. And a SWOT analysis could be a useful tactic. I'm having to attach this next bit to the end of the previous bit because the battery ran out. So it may look slightly different. But anyway, the SWOT analysis. And I'm not saying that the SWOT analysis is always correct or always an appropriate solution or suggestion if the 9th and 10th cards don't agree. But I think that this is where the reader can be a source of information and suggestions to the questioner, and this can help the questioner, right? So you maybe talk about various ideas that people have put forward to deal with particular kinds of situations that the questioner is dealing with, so that you know the kinds of questions that people ask you. So people are always asking you about money questions. Go on the internet and look at blogs and websites that give you solutions or suggestions about how to get your finances in order, or how to budget, or how to make a profit, or whatever it happens to be. And educate yourself as a reader about what solutions different people have come up with. Right? Or maybe people ask you about how to begin a project. Right, so you look at blogs on project management and time, maybe time saving or efficiency experts, and what they suggest about the best way to go about doing something. Or maybe people are always asking about relationship. So read some, or educate yourself and bring yourself up to date about what experts or supposed experts suggest for solving relationship problems. And so this means that after the reading, you're giving the questioner some ideas, so that when they go back into their life, they've got something to work with that's going to help them solve the problems they're dealing with when they're back on their own in their life. Right? Because if people come to reading, you maybe get half an hour or an hour, but then the people go back in to deal with and work with the people they know and they're in a family relationship with, and so on. But they're back on their own. So if you can give them ammunition that they can use to come up with solutions, I think that's a good reading. So that's what I wanted to say about the 10th card. And I'm thinking that next I'll do a sample Celtic Cross spread with an actual question, and we'll see how to put it all together and make sense of all 10 cards. Or at least I'll give you one version of the answer, because I mean there's going to be more than one way of handling a certain situation. So ideally I'll upload that video next weekend, and that'll be the 10th of May. So thanks for watching. If you have comments or questions, you can leave them down below, or email me directly, bllntr@yahoo.com. Other than that, have a good week, and we'll talk to you again. Okay, bye-bye.